Welcome to the relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. There appear to be preliminary reports about former unified lightweight champion George Cambodia reaching a deal with Matchroom, with Lou DiBella as the facilitator. Lou is still involved.
To what extent?
Not completely sure, as Lou DiBella himself doesn't seem to have a broadcast deal with anybody so much as contracts with the fighters, and he uses those contracts to get those fighters' fights on other people's cards, mostly on other people's shows. So there seems to be a co-promotional deal that will see George Cambodia return to his native Australia against Matthew Germain.
Remember that George is still rebounding off that knockout loss to Vasyl Lomachenko earlier this year.
So here's where it gets interesting. Rumor has it that Skye Nicholson will be making her next ring appearance on the undercard of that show opposite the ring, America's own Tiaria Brown, who just so happens to be Skye's mandatory challenger via the WBC. Tiaria, who even before Skye Nicholson became a champion, was calling her out for a fight.
Why?
Clout chasing. There is no other way to put it. Plain old clout chasing. Because Tiaria Brown didn't all of a sudden start calling out Skye when Skye won a belt. She's been calling her out long before that, when Skye only had a handful of fights and she was just a prospect.
What did Skye debut as a professional? 2 years ago? Where Tiaria Brown debuted as a professional way back there in 2016. That if you were gonna start calling people out, why would you call out a prospect?
I was never comfortable with that. Tiaria Brown calling out a prospect with a handful of fights, but Skye has made herself into more than just a prospect. She's a champion now, and there is an actual precedent for a fight.
And I like this fight.
If all these rumors turn out to be true, that George has signed to Matchroom, and as a result, he'll be making his debut in February, and young Skye will be on the undercard opposite the ring Tiara, that is welcome news. I do like that fight.
So often when Skye Nicholson's name is brought up, it's in tandem with the name of Amanda Serrano, who she's been calling out, who she now hopes to unify with. I've no doubts that Amanda is just as annoyed by Skye as Skye is annoyed by Tiara.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Don't leave underwear with skid marks on it in the hamper.
What?
We already knew that Tiara was in position to fight Skye Nicholson as her mandatory challenger. She finally started fighting in the necessary eliminators to challenge for an alphabet title, because for a long time, Tiara wasn't doing that. But, she finally did. She got around to it. She's Skye's mandatory. Here we are.
Tiara Brown's sports professional record of 17 wins with no losses, no draws, 11 knockouts, having debuted as a professional in 2016.
To Skye Nicholson, sports professional record of 12 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. If she has almost as many fights as Tiara Brown in such a short amount of time, it's because she hit the ground running after going pro.
She's managed to squeeze in a lot of fights in a short amount of time.
Now, I'm sure that Skye Nicholson would much prefer to face, say, Amanda Serrano in a unification match, or Nina Menke in a unification match, than Tiaria Brown. She doesn't really get much out of fighting Tiaria Brown. She just gets to keep her belt.
That's it.
But it would be a credible opponent on her CV, an unbeaten fighter like herself. It would be a credible scalp. And I've talked about this fight already, that between Skye Nicholson's long levers, those long arms, those long legs, and her movement, her youth, her freshness, and her speed, fighting out of the southpaw stance, I think she can out-hustle Tiara Brown, who's no spring chicken. She's in her mid-30s.
Very strong, though.
She's got power. But you know what they say about power? Power counts for nothing if you can't deliver it. The power in your punch counts for nothing if you can't land. And Skye makes herself a very difficult fighter to land a punch on, a solid punch. So I figure she'll be able to out-hustle and out-maneuver Tiaria Brown en route to a points decision. Maybe it'll be a little harder than the Raven Chapman fight was, maybe. But remember, if all of this rings true, if the rumors check out, and this is going down in Australia, who do you think is going to get the judges' consideration?
Skye Hot Thighs Nicholson.
There it is. Skye is a very crafty boxer, very good at what she does, even if some of us don't find it entertaining. She's very effective with that pure boxer-based style, just boxing on the outside, pot-shotting comfortably.
It's worked for her.
Tiara Brown, as many American fighters often do, has been brash. towards Skye Nicholson. She's done a lot of talking. I hope you didn't do all that talking just to get out hustled by Skye.
Careful what you wish for, because you just might get it.
Spent a lot of time focusing on Skye Nicholson, and now you might have her attention.
This is a good fight.
Battle of the Unbeatens, and we always knew that this was in the background, that this was a potentiality, because she is Skye's mandatory after all. So unless Skye can book herself a unification match with, say, Nina Menke, she's gonna have to deal with Tiaria. Moreover, can Tiaria deal with her? She thinks she can. We'll see about that. We'll see if these rumors check out. First look, Skye Nicholson on points is the pick. Men's Cruiserweight news, former champion Chris Billam-Smith could go straight into a WBC title fight after his loss to Zurdo Ramirez. Britain's Chris Billam-Smith could be fast-tracked to a WBC title shot after his recent loss to Zurdo Ramirez. Billam-Smith fought with extraordinary bravery, but lost his WBO title to WBA champion Ramirez in an exciting clash this past weekend. We all saw it, and we talked about it here on the channel. The Briton finished the fight with several injuries, including a bad cut over his left eye, damage to his hand. He will need time to recover, but by the time he does, he could potentially go straight into a WBC world title fight.
I think Nova Scotia's Ryan Rositsky might take some issue with that.
Ryan Rositsky, the WBC's interim champion, the guy who's supposed to be in a pole position to fight for the WBC title. If it turns out that Chris gets a crack at the apple before he does, yeah, I think Ryan's gonna have a problem with that, especially since the WBC has forced him to fight Peralta for a second time.
We'll get into it a little later.
World Boxing Council President Mauricio Suleiman said, "We'll certainly rank him, and he has the possibility of fighting for a title." I like how Mauricio talks as if he's not directly involved, as if it's open to speculation, open and subject to the imagination.
Like it's not up to him.
The real reason Mauricio might be so willing, so receptive to not only rank Chris Billam-Smith, but fast-track him to an alphabet title is because he does have a major promoter behind him, boxing on a major platform.
Money talks.
The percentage that the World Boxing Council normally takes out of a fighter's purse would be bigger if Chris had the belt than, say, Ryan Rositsky, little-known Ryan Rositsky, and the even lesser-known Noel Mikealian, the actual champion right now.
The reigning champion right now.
The WBC gets to collect more money from a Chris Billam-Smith fight than any of their fights, so naturally, they'd be willing to give Chris a shot. Noel Mikealian is the current WBC Cruiserweight World Champion. Although his defense against number-one ranked contender Ryan Rositsky has continually been postponed, Rositsky is now due to fight Argentina's Yamil Peralta for a WBC interim title. It's really in defense of his own title.
He already has it. He's already interim champion.
So what happened was, several months ago, the WBC ordered Noel Mikealian to satisfy his mandatory challenger in Ryan Rositsky, and the fight was postponed several times, approximately 4 by my count. It was up to Don King, who promotes Noel Mikealian, to put it together, and time again it kept getting pushed back.
Till it fell apart altogether.
At which point, the Canada-based promotional outfit that promotes Ryan, Three Lions Promotions, they were supposed to be doing the fight between Ryan and Noel, and all of a sudden, Noel's going through some legal trouble with Don, and he can't fight.
What?
That's the story. All of a sudden, he's going through some legal issue with Don that prevents him from fighting Ryan, even though Ryan's promoter would be the ones doing the show.
What?
The cruiserweight status right now is confusing. Mikealian has legal procedures against his promoter, Don King. Suleiman claimed that is why we had to support Rositsky. They had a signed contract to fight December 7th. It's all a mess.
How are they supporting Ryan by sticking Yamil Peralta on him? If they wanted to support Ryan, they would have stripped Noel.
Common sense. If Noel is unable to defend his title for whatever reason, you strip him of the title, relieve him of it, label him a champion in recess if it makes you feel better, and let it go to Ryan. They didn't do that. They let him keep it.
He's still WBC champion, and Ryan is stuck with Yamil Peralta.
The timing of all of this is impeccable. That you managed to get into this legal situation with Don right on time to withdraw from the Rositsky fight.
The one the WBC ordered. The same WBC that is now saying they're willing to fast-track Chris Billam-Smith to a title shot.
The same Chris Billam-Smith that Noel Mikealian himself called out a couple of months ago in the UK on Sky Sports.
When Chris was still WBO champion.
While Noel was still under orders to fight Ryan.
Coincidence?
So what? What's next? What do you do now? Because now you have everything to lose, but there's not much to win. You could win other world titles, but having the WBC world title is the major one, the best title. Now I'm like thinking, what do I want to do? Unification, or am I just looking for a lucrative payday to make some money and retire? Do I want to go in a different division? It's like looking for the next thing, because as a fighter also you need something to motivate you. Because if you have no motivation or no goals, then it could be dangerous.
Sounds pretty strategic, doesn't he? Like he's thought about this. He's carefully planned his next move. Mauricio Sulaiman said he, Chris Billam-Smith, could go straight to the winner, Sulaiman added. We have Badu Jack also trying to come back. He was champion in recess. There are so many moving pieces that are not known in the day-to-day, but we have to be consistent and be within the rules, but also try to understand every specific situation, which is different.
Sounds like a word sandwich.
There's an old saying on my planet that goes a little something like, the truth is often simple, as it is solid through and through, finite, whereas bullshit takes a lot longer to explain.
Enter the word sandwich.
So what? What's next? What do you do now? Because now you have everything to lose, but there's not much to win. You could win other world titles, but having the WBC world title is the major one, the best title. Now I'm like thinking, what do I want to do? Unification, or am I just looking for a lucrative payday?
Noel Mikealian, the same guy who cannot satisfy his mandatory challenger due to his legal troubles with Don King, not but a little over a week ago offered a title shot to Jake Paul.
I'm not kidding around, man. You can't make this up.
So when you're supposed to fight Ryan Rositsky, you can't because of your legal troubles with Don. But when it comes to fighting Jake, oh, you can fight Jake. You can do that.
You can offer him a title shot that's supposed to go to somebody else?
How does that work?
I'll tell you how it works. The World Boxing Council is in on it. The World Boxing Council are helping Don King and Noel Mikealian freeze out Ryan Rositsky.
That's how.
This whole bit about Noel Mikealian going through a legal skirmish with Don King might be a last-ditch effort to prevent the Ryan Rositsky fight from happening. It was all they could come up with.
The fight's already been postponed 4 times. Ryan's promoter is willing to pay for it.
Since Don can't.
Don't you see what's happening? The World Boxing Council is willing to let Noel fight Chris Billam-Smith straight away, who would get him more money and get them more money than fighting Ryan Rositsky.
They get a bigger piece too.
Noel Mikealian himself is willing to afford Jake Paul a title shot ahead of so many bona fide boxers, so many ranked contenders, Ryan Rositsky among them, who's supposed to have first dibs. He's willing to do that.
Because it gets him more money. And the World Boxing Council would be on board because it would also get them more money.
A bigger pie makes for a better piece. And how long has the World Boxing Council been trying to crash Jake Paul's party, trying to get involved with the massive dollar amounts and the success that he's having? If he actually wanted to fight Noel, that would be the segue.
If he actually wanted to, but I'd wager Jake doesn't even know who the man is.
So their second best bet to get at a big purse, bigger than what they'd make defending against Ryan, is to put Noel in the ring with Chris Billam-Smith. All this stuff about Noel's legal skirmish with Don King, yeah, I smell bullshit.
Plain old bullshit.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? You got heavyweight champion of the world. Like, what does he want with Jake Paul? He's not making enough money already fighting Anthony Joshua at Wembley. Like, if I was world champion and the king of my division, I wouldn't even be bothered. I don't even want to know the name Jake Paul. So I think it's a bit embarrassing for the sport of boxing. Like, you've got the champions there, undefeated, unified, undisputed, and they're calling him out. What for? You're not making enough money being the king of the division. They should be. And if they're not, they're doing something wrong.
That Tommy Fury, of all people, who actually fought Jake Paul, who actually made it his mission to fight him, that Tommy Fury would think that he's in any position to chastise a professional boxer for going after a social media influencer, you've essentially put your professional boxing career on ice so that you can join the circus full time. Because look at who he's fighting. He's fighting Darren Till. Why are you fighting a UFC fighter instead of a seasoned gatekeeper, or a journeyman, or a former champion? Someone you can actually learn something from to further advance your own boxing career. Why aren't you fighting someone like that? What are you gonna learn boxing Darren Till?
You've heard the old saying, don't shoot the messenger.
So maybe Tommy Fury's got a point. That Daniel Dubois and some other fighters, some other champions like Artur Beterbiev, who has also called out Jake Paul for a fight, maybe these guys shouldn't focus on a social media influencer. Maybe they shouldn't. Maybe it's just not in keeping with the decorum and becoming of a champion to target someone like Jake. Maybe there is some truth to that, but look at who it's coming from. You can't ignore it.
So there is something to be said for all the people that complain about Jake Paul's presence in the sport of boxing and this past weekend's Mike Tyson fight. As farcical as people might think that is, his presence is thereby legitimized by the people that are calling him out. Anyone from Antonio Tarver to Tony Bellew to a Hall of Famer and Carl Froch, active reigning champions with belts, are calling him out.
Newly crowned WBC Bridgerweight champion Kevin Lorena is one of the latest.
He's calling him out.
That if the basic idea is Jake Paul don't belong in boxing, if that's how you feel, then don't legitimize him by calling him out. Because then you're treating him like he belongs. Then you're acting like he's somebody that you need to call out. Where's your dignity? Where's your self-respect?
Tommy isn't wrong, but at the same time, Tommy isn't any better because you put your whole boxing career on ice to join a circus. To join a circus, full-time.
When Tommy started out, at least I thought, he was trying to follow in the footsteps of his older brother, his older, more popular brother, Tyson Fury, that this was a legitimate boxing career. But just a few fights in, you could see he couldn't hack it. You could see this guy's not gonna make it.
He ain't it.
That if the only way for you to make it to those big places and those big paydays is to climb up the ranks the traditional way, the old-fashioned way, then you're never gonna get there.
Enter Jake Paul, enter the Misfits circuit. You decided to join the circus full-time because it pays better, and frankly, you don't have the talent, you don't have the ability to do it the old-fashioned way.
You know, he almost sounds angry, outraged, that more accomplished fighters than he is are trying to merge into this lane, but that's what you did.
And you're saying that they shouldn't? That they need to do better? What, because you don't?
Or because you can't.
Because what you're doing out of necessity, whereas those guys, they're just doing it by choice. Is that it?
Those are still hollow words coming from him, and that's the bottom line. That before you give a social commentary on how a champion should conduct themselves, look at how you conducted yourself. Stones in a glass house, Tommy. Throwing stones in a glass house.
To get some situational awareness, Tommy.
Now I'm wondering how Daniel Dubois is going to respond. Not just Daniel, but Don Charles as well.
No, he's never at a loss for words.
I'm not telling you that it's all right for Daniel or any other active reigning champion in boxing to call out Jake. I'm just saying that Tommy's not in any position to talk.
You're telling them that they should do better? Well, you should know better.
Look at the Ken doll on his high horse.